So, hi everyone. I'm here with Hattie Fancourt today. She's the business development director for GB Group. So, Hattie, thanks very much for joining me.
No, it's lovely to be here. Thanks, Chris.
So, you guys are obviously in the sort of like identity fraud management sort of investigation kind of space, and it'd be good to hear what are some of the things that you've been seeing, I suppose, particularly since since we've coming out over the last year and then into this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as we all know, we see constantly on the news and in the media that
Mm,
there's a huge pressure on everybody financially, and that's having a
mm,
huge impact in what we're seeing here at GBG. Um,
mm,
it's absolutely no secret that we're going to see more people defaulting and more people, struggling financially. So we are seeing a huge increase in demand from business, a huge range of businesses where they need support in tracing and investigating people. Sadly, with financial difficulties, it does increase fraudulent activity. People do become more
mm.
desperate. People do look for new ways to find money and to find money quickly. So it does put an awful lot of pressure on businesses, and we are seeing that there are new ways of committing fraud, and there are new ways of people trying to hide themselves as well. So there's a massive increase for us.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so you're seeing that from, I suppose, from businesses. I mean, they're starting to see fraud increase. I know that's been in the media quite a bit in terms of like seeing that starting to come through. I mean, do you think that's going to escalate? I suppose post the holidays and put into the new year. I mean, is that I know people sort of like now starting to investigate and really sort of work out what we can do.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, you know, as we often say, fraudsters are so intelligent, and they're always trying to find new ways of committing fraud. And once we kind of once we clock onto one way of we find a trend, they find a new trend. So it's about staying that one step ahead and understanding which areas are going to see those increases.
And how does that work? I suppose one of the things we've really worked on since since lockdown and the pandemic has been sort of like this whole sort of shift toward digital. I mean, does that make fraud easier? I mean, definitely saw that when the internet started. I mean, it seemed easier to be able to do that. I mean, are people using that? I mean, are fraudsters using that? Do you think? I mean, does it make it easier now than it was even sort of 3 years ago?
I think again, where I work at GBG, we've got a massive raft of services to counter fraud, and
Mm,
we've got a different side of the business to where I work called ID, our ID3 side of the business, where they work
mm,
to help businesses put things in place so that it's not easy for fraudsters to, take out insurance policies or to take out, to
mm,
work with businesses. It's putting those safeguards at the front. However, it is, as I said, fraudsters are so clever that they know about these technologies, and they do know ways around it. So it is a case of being really vigilant and to understand, from your own business's perspective, what safeguards you need to put in place and how you can prevent this from happening. So, I work on the investigate side of GBG, and we support a huge raft of
mm,
businesses in identifying fraudsters at the point that they have already got a policy, or they have already started engaging with and working with a business. So, a big area that I work with personally is the insurance sector. And we're seeing, a
mm.
huge demand from, like a gadget insurance. Is one example. I'm seeing a lot more questions about gadget insurance, and it's a bit of a it's a bit of a quick win. They're
Mm.
lower, their lower claims. So perhaps previously they were investigated a little bit less. But in these kind of more desperate times, and when people have got less money, maybe it's quite easy to lose your iPad and make a claim. And actually, we need to be a bit more vigilant and check that these people are legitimate, and check that, can we put better safeguards in place?
I mean, do you think that sort of like looking at gadget insurance as an example, do you think the fact that that's becoming more common in terms of like getting extra information is a function of increasing fraud? So people are actually stretched financially, and now they're looking for opportunities, and this is a way of doing it. Maybe these were previously written off before. Do you think it's a function of the businesses? Maybe that they're looking for additional revenue because because we're inflationary times as well, so they're looking for returns. Or do you think it's the fact that sort of, I suppose, that we've got extra technology for us to be able to do that now? It could be one of those three that's sort of driving the interest in, being able to be more efficient and find these extras. But there could be also increasing, almost like demand coming through from the market as a result of stress. Do you think any of those sort of dominate, or is it all three?
Literally, I think it's all three. I think it's the times that we're living in. It's very difficult. It's very, very difficult for businesses. It's very difficult for consumers. I think, I genuinely think that there is, it is like an overriding recipe of we just, as every single business now, I think you do need to be a bit more vigilant. I think you do have to have more safeguards in place. Obviously, there is the flip side that you've got, most customers are legitimate, and, the software and the services that we provide, it also gives you that peace of mind that, when you are paying out a legitimate claim, that you can feel really comfortable about it. So it's not just, we're not spending the whole time catching bad guys and saying, we've it's not 9 out of 10 people are fraudsters, but, when you are able to stop a fraudster from claiming, obviously that's a fantastic thing. But equally, when you're paying out legitimate claims and legitimate people, knowing that you've got these extra checks and knowing that you can just feel fully comfortable that when you pay out that money, or when, we're using insurance as quite a big example, but when you do pay out on a claim, for example, you can feel very comfortable that this person is legitimate and it's okay to pay that money out.
It's in some ways it keeps the cost of insurance down because it's making it more efficient, right? So you're not losing money unnecessarily.
Exactly.
And what about digital? And I suppose one of the things that definitely see with digital is it allows you to you can change telephone numbers easily. You can change emails easily. I think I've got 3 emails at least, 3 or 4 emails at least. Most of us have, right? And that becomes quite easy to avoid being contacted. That's something that fraudsters might use. You've got third-party fraud. I suppose you've got first-party fraud, but people can use that in sort of nefarious ways to maybe avoid being contacted and those kind of things, which is more the investigate side. Do you see that? Is that been a change in the industry, particularly since the pandemic?
Absolutely. So the biggest area that I work with is the collections industry, and there's been a huge shift in how the collections industry work with customers. So digital engagement is, the hottest topic. What I'm talking to pretty much all of the firms about. It's becoming, there's still a slight demand, but it's becoming a less of a demand for a valid home address, and a huge demand now for a correct mobile number and a correct email address. You're absolutely right in terms of it's easier to change those, and it's even easy for a customer to change their name slightly. But we actually introduced a new matching technology earlier on this year, and we're seeing absolutely fantastic results. And what this called is entity resolution, and it's a really intelligent matching technology where we're actually able now to read between the lines. So if you've got a customer that is Robert Evans, and he's Rob, Robert, Bob, Bobby, he could be all of these different variations of himself. Perhaps he lives at number 12, the High Street, but actually he's going to start saying that he lives at Ivy Cottage, the High Street, and just making these little tweaks and changes. And as you said, he might have multiple email addresses. So you've then got this one entity that can have all of these different variations. And it could be, with one business, he's used this email address, this address, and he's Bobby. With this business, he's Robert, and he's used a different email address, and et cetera, et cetera. So you can create all of these different versions of yourself. And with our entity resolution matching, we're able to read between the lines, and we can say Ivy Cottage is the same as 12 the High Street, match that together. Robert, Bobby and Bob, they're the same person, let's match that together. And we're able to give you results that we didn't have the intelligence to do it years ago, whereas now Those customers that are purposely creating these different personas, we're able to merge them together and actually give you that correct result and say, okay, so for this person, you had this particular email address, but we know that he also uses this one, and this one. And this is the most up-to-date mobile number for him. We've checked it. It's definitely valid. This is the best way to contact him. So we're able to give such better results now.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that's very difficult, difference between, I suppose, email as an example and house is it's very easy to change your email, but it's quite difficult to change where you live, right? So
yeah, that's exactly it. So you can, there's less options to change where you physically live, but the most effective way to physically engage with people now is digitally. So I think, in terms of actually getting results and getting responses, it's still far, 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 far better to send text messages, emails, where people can, respond to it at a time that's convenient, respond to it at a time where they're feeling, they don't feel backed into a corner, and they can sit down with a cup of tea and say, right, I'm in a mess. I'm going to open this link now, and I'm prepared to kind of face it head on. Whereas when you're getting, if you're getting a knock at the door, if you're getting, numbers phoning you, it's very easy to kind of just say, I don't want to be backed into that corner.
I mean, do you think we've been very much sort of like, everything's digital, or everything sort of, you still need to have the phone, and you sort of get almost like breaking into these two camps. I mean, do you think there's still need for physical face visits? Do you think there's still need for sending letters and calling people versus, I suppose, some of these more digital pieces? I mean, do you see how do you sort of see that evolving, and what you kind of hear from customers? Because it does feel like it's been a little bit sort of like all or nothing. It's kind of like we're just sort of swinging over here. Are we overcorrecting?
Yeah, I think what we tend to see is, plan A, plan B. So the emails and the mobiles are becoming plan A. I'd say pretty much 90% of the conversations, they don't want to be, paying for an address on the first attempt. And then, again, because the technology is so developed now, you can see if the text messages have been opened, you can see if the emails have been opened, if they're getting no response. So we're telling, we provide them, and we can tell them this mobile and this email is valid, and it is valid. But as you said, you might have 5 or 6 email addresses, and perhaps 2 weeks ago they've decided that I'm never opening that inbox again. There's too many businesses connected to that. I just want to kind of leave that behind me. So you can kind of see that on plan A, it's not being opened. They're not clicking these links. We're not getting through to them. There's not really any point to keep sending emails to that email inbox because they're not opening it. We've tried it. It's not working. So come back for plan B, where, okay, this is where they're living. Send them a letter and see if you can get a response that way. So I think, the digital is the quickest, it's the easiest. And I think customers genuinely find it the most comfortable way to be contacted. I think it gives them more power. It makes them feel a bit less vulnerable. And it is very much, look, when it's a good time for you, engage with this. Whereas, I think even sometimes opening a letter, you can pick it up off the floor and you think, it looks like a bill, or it looks like something scary, and it's easy just to kind of put it to one side. But if you're not getting those clicks and you're not getting that response from the digital engagement, you've got to try another method.
You can talk about all the communication piece, but you can't actually get hold of people. Then none of that stuff kind of happens, which exactly. I suppose is the other kind of angle, right? So, exactly. And it feels like using this sort of like blended type of approach seems to be getting more common, but it seems like it's subtly shifting to being digital first rather than all digital or even more traditional kind of approaches.
Definitely.
And how quickly do you think that's sort of changing? Because it's different in different parts of the industry, for example. So is that different in insurance versus collection agencies versus, let's say, more sort of like creditors? Or, I mean, do you see differences by market sector?
Yeah.
In terms of digital adoption and digital first.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So another area that I work really closely with is the pension sector. And again,
Mm.
digital engagement is the hot topic. It's the way of,
Mm.
a lot of people that are at pensioner age, when when they took on the pension and when they were first interacting with the pension firm, mobiles and emails were kind of a bit of a secondary thing. It's a we
They didn't
send you.
exist. They didn't exist.
No, we send you a
I
paper
remember
letter.
that.
Every 6 months you get your
Yeah.
paper letter through the door. We have no idea if you've moved 20 times. We have no idea if you still live there. I mean, I still get my the previous owner of this house. Every 6 months I get the Scottish Widows dropping on the doorstep. Sent it back so many times, and it's like it doesn't matter as long as we keep sending our letters. That's the process. Whereas that's massively shifting now, and I'm working really closely with the pension sector on digitalising online platforms, self-service platforms. People understanding what pensions do you have, where are they, if you've been employed by 5 different companies, do you know where your pensions are, do you know how much you've actually got, do you know how to access it? And there's so many people that don't, and if they have moved house even once from when they had that particular pension, the chances are that it's that information is still dropping on your old doormat, and they haven't got your new address, they haven't got your email address, and it's just this information is just floating out there somewhere. And it's about, actually, we need to get the pension sector digitalizing, and we need to get people to start self-serving and to understand better where your information is, how do you get it, how do you consolidate everything. So that's been a really interesting project. So I think that's a great example of yes, even the most traditional of industries is digitalizing.
I mean, I remember way back. I mean, it was very, very manual, and you used to actually go and visit a pension advisor, physically in their office to kind of arrange it, and it was on paper.
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, as you get to sort of like the end of your working career, then you often have multiple pensions. I mean, do you think that could be even more so now, though, even with younger people, right? Because people, they move around more, potentially. They also certainly move around in terms of extra jobs, and sort of like you do sort of pick up this sort of like little pensions everywhere versus the consolidation. So do you think that's probably going to be growing? I mean, now probably the challenge is around digital readiness, right? So it's like, well, people might have an email, but it wasn't in the original account, right? So, but do you think that's going to change in terms of like this search around where was everyone, where are all their pensions? Do you think that's going to be an increasing trend?
Yeah, it's absolutely massive. And I mean, you think about the cost of rental properties. You've got a lot more people living in house shares. You've got it takes longer for people to typically get on the property ladder now. So renters tend to move more often. You've got people, as you said, I'm myself, I'm 31, and I've lived in the last few years, I've lived in 4 different properties myself. And I think when you just look at that as one example, you just think, actually, the first company that I worked for, they'd have absolutely no idea where I am. They'd have absolutely no idea what my email address is. So it would, currently, the onus is on me to find out how do I access that information. But I'm at a point where I don't really think about where my pension is, and I think it's such a long way off that I'll deal with that later. But the onus is turning, and there is more responsibility on the pension fund side to make sure, reunite people with their assets and make sure that people know where their assets are. And, there'll be so much that's unclaimed. There'll be so much that, even if you've got a small pension pot somewhere, you worked somewhere for a year, there's a few £100 in there maybe. And to a lot of people, as they might just say, there's not much there. I don't know how to find it, so I'll just let it go. And you think, if there's millions of people doing the same thing, that's millions and millions of pounds that's just being, brushed to one side. So there is a big piece coming in, which I think it will happen this year, which is called the Pensions Dashboard, where the pension providers will need to have their customer information up to date, and it will be that parents, grandchildren, whoever it is, can log on to the pensions dashboard, and it will use your national insurance number, your personal information, and it will be able to connect all of your pensions together, and it will give you the ability to understand exactly what you've got, where it is, and to be able to consolidate it. So it's been, really, really interesting project, and I could talk about the pensions market for ages.
Well, it's yeah, I mean, you just mentioned that the number of times you moved, then you might actually have more addresses than you do emails.
Yeah.
I was thinking that was as you were going through. I mean, that is actually a possibility, isn't it?
Yeah.
So,
Well, for me personally,
so,
I haven't changed my personal email since I was a teenager. And I've just stuck with the same Gmail account. It's only, I've changed employment a couple of times, so that email address obviously has changed, but my personal one has remained the same, which I think is why digital engagement is usually a safer option, because most people, if you're not trying to avoid being contact, if you're not going out of your way to create lots of different email addresses, you don't want to be manning lots of different inboxes. You'll have your main primary email that you use for most of your important correspondence. So if you're not someone that's avoiding being found, actually your email address is the most reliable way of finding them.
Yeah, I mean, that's quite interesting. You could actually see more stability in emails than you do in addresses.
Yeah.
Particularly on personal emails, right? I mean, because if you change jobs, then you get different work email addresses. But you could actually see more stability going forward than it was historically. And I say even with mobile phones, for certain sectors, right? Because people sort of resist changing mobile phones.
Yeah.
But there will be people who use. I mean, I know people they have almost like burner emails because they know they're going to get a lot of spam and those kind of things. So, it's just whether those kind of get used.
Yeah, that I think that absolutely does exist. But I do think, again, for legitimate people that because there are a lot of people that could be in financial difficulty that actually. They do just want to get it sorted, and they do want to be contacted, and they do want to know their options. And, they won't be avoiding that contact. And actually, when they do get that email, they'll click it quickly and they'll resolve it quickly. I think you get different people look at debt in very different ways. Or some people will bury their head in the sand and hope it goes away. But you've got other people that actually, because it keeps them up at night, they want that resolution as quick as possible. They want that payment plan in place. They want to know that they're not going to be getting letters and phone calls. They want to set something up so that it's almost like, right, I've faced this problem head on. I'm resolving it. I can relax a bit about it now, and it doesn't need to keep me up at night.
Yeah. I mean, how do you think that changed from an email and from a mobile phone point of view? I mean, if we go back sort of like 10 years, I mean, people used to use their business emails sometimes for as contact details, or their business phone for contact details. And then obviously, that market sort of changed a bit, so that those are almost like less stable from a personal point of view than, maybe, we all have a Gmail or, whatever the service is that sort of like we know is going to be there on the longer term. I mean, do you see a shift away from almost like work emails to personal emails? I mean, is that sort of like, do you think that's really consolidating to people having one go-to email, maybe a couple of go-to emails that and is that a change?
Yeah, well, one of the massive strengths that we have here at GBG is we do provide you with multiple contact sources. So if somebody does have a live work email and a live personal or two personal, we will provide you with all three, and we will be able to differentiate which are personal and which are work emails. So I know most businesses that we work with will prefer to have a personal email than a work email, because again, I think from a customer perspective, especially if it is contacting somebody about money that they owe, I think it will catch you very off guard if you get an email to your work email, and you don't want your employers seeing it, and often your employers can look at your work inbox and things like that, and it will maybe panic you a lot more if you're getting contact via your work channels rather than your personal channels. So I think it's a massive strength that when we provide the contact information, we do tell you this is very, very, very likely to be a work email, or this is very, very, very likely to be a personal email.
And how has GDPR and data privacy sort of, I suppose, affected the business in terms of like, particularly on the personal side and the consumer side, in terms of like consent and sort of,
Yeah.
those kind of things in terms of where the information comes from. I mean, how's that had an impact,
Yeah, I
and
mean,
how have you guys had to adapt to that, right?
yeah, it changed things massively, but genuinely, it changed things so much for the better because
Mm,
the businesses that we work with have got a legitimate interest. There is a
mm,
legitimate reason why they can have this contact information. Not just any business could set up a meeting with me and I can provide them with
mm,
your personal information. And actually, I
yeah,
think that will make everybody feel so much more comfortable. And it is businesses that qualify through GDPR and through
mm,
compliance and through the relevant channels, that there is a legitimate reason why we can provide these contact details to you. So there are limited
mm,
sectors that we can work with, and there are very strict use cases in terms of, whenever we have a new business meeting, we clarify very clearly, what are you using this information for? You couldn't
yeah,
just have a company phone up and say, oh, we want to do a marketing campaign because we want to sell lots of these. Absolutely not.
mm,
We're not going to provide you with a mass list
mm,
of email addresses so that you can bombard them with something they haven't given permission for. However, if
yeah,
if this person needs to be, pension sector, reuniting somebody with their assets, that is a fantastic legitimate interest, and actually we're doing a great service. Again, if you do owe
yeah,
a company money, there is a legitimate interest there. So GDPR
yeah,
changed things massively for the business, but actually, I think it's a great thing for consumers.
yeah, probably in a good way. So it's really interesting. I mean, I love the sector in terms of like fraud and investigation, sort of like seeing how things are changing, because you're right at the front end of sort of like seeing some of the demographic changes. I think, which is fascinating.
Yeah.
I mean, where do you think it goes from here into out into the rest of this year and sort of like out a couple of years? I mean, sort of like we've been through quite a journey over the last 3 years. I mean, what do you sort of see? How do you see it sort of like changing going forward?
Yeah, I think, digitalizing in terms of communication, that's, I've talked about that an awful lot, but that is the topic that I'm
Mm,
talking about more and more and more across all
mm,
sectors. So I think that's absolutely huge in terms of the conversations that I'm having business to business. But in terms of fraudulent activity, I think we're going to see
mm,
a massive increase. I
mm,
think the people that are facing financial difficulty, you've kind of got people that are used to it, but we're going to be finding a new sector of people that fall into like the
mm,
new branch of, they could afford their lifestyles 1 year ago, maybe 2 years ago, but with the cost of living increasing so significantly, actually they're now falling in this bracket where they're starting to default. They're finding themselves in
mm,
uncharted waters that they're not used to, and it's going to feel very uncomfortable for them. So I
mm,
think we're going to see new people facing financial difficulty and trying to find quick ways to get themselves out of it. So I think we'll find more people.
yeah,
I think we'll find more fraud from people that aren't typical bad fraudsters, and actually just more desperate people that are trying to
yeah,
find a solution. And I think we'll find more people don't want to be found because they've got themselves into
mm,
significant financial difficulty. Perhaps they've got 5 or 6 different companies trying to contact them. They've defaulted on quite a
mm,
lot, and they're feeling incredibly vulnerable, and they're feeling incredibly
yeah,
scared. So the best thing that they can do is, from their perspective, is to go off grid. So I think it's we need technology like our entity resolution so that we can keep helping people get out of these situations.
yeah,
As I said, client vulnerability is a massive, massive topic, and we talk about it a lot at GBG, and we talk about it a lot with the businesses that we work with. And it's so important that when we are communicating with and we are contacting customers, that we understand their vulnerabilities. And especially in the
mm,
collections industry, I pretty much anybody that is facing debt collection will be classed as
mm,
vulnerable. They're in a situation that's very
yeah.
uncomfortable, and nobody's going to be enjoying that.
I suppose part of it is trying to get ahead of it, so you sort of get ahead of it, sort of work out what your financial situation is, and
Yeah.
get. I mean, because there is good help out there. I mean, there's good
Yes.
help either from the debt advice sector, but also from the companies themselves. And like, it's like, how do you get ahead of it to, so you can address it as soon as possible, because the longer you leave it, the worse it gets, right?
Exactly that. Exactly
I
that.
think
And
that's
I
an
think
important. I mean, that's obviously an important role, right?
100%, 100%. And I think that's why I am so passionate about this, being able to communicate with people and to be able to get that message across of, you're not alone. Actually, so many people coming into this year are going to be feeling financially vulnerable. There's going to be more conversations about it. There's already more conversations about it. I mean, you can't, on the radio, on the television, there's a lot more conversations about, let's speak to this particular family who it was on this morning about the energy meters not being able to top them up, and actually we're making a decision between, do we put food on the table or do we heat the house? And it's really, really distressing, and it's a horrible situation for a lot of people. So I think by getting the messages out there, the help is so much better than you probably think it is, and that being able to set up a way of getting out of financial difficulty. They do, these companies work with you, not against you, and everybody's end goal, absolutely everybody, wants to see that customer out of that situation.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be an interesting year. I mean, it's concerning, I know, sort of where we're sitting now, but it's going to be. I mean, hopefully it plays out better than than we think,
I
and
hope so.
but it's going to be a busy year, I think, no doubt as well. So,
Yeah.
but Hattie, thanks very much for making the time for me. I appreciate it. As I say, I find it's a very interesting sector, and I learn a lot every time we chat. So I really appreciate it. So thanks very much.
No, it's all. I've really enjoyed it. Thanks, Chris.